Today, we become legends.
Alright, it's time for the highly requested Guardian alignment chart. I've been reading through the comments on my previous two videos of this, being Assassins and Mages. Go watch those if you haven't already, by the way. I'll explain a little more about the format in those videos. And Guardians are definitely the most requested class out of the remaining three, being Guardians, Hunters, and Warriors. So if you do want to see the Hunter and Warrior ones coming up pretty soon, then definitely hit that subscribe button so you don't miss them. But yeah, I'll give a brief explanation of how it works in this video, of course, because it's not your typical kind of tier list format. Basically, there's two axes on this little grid, and we're going to have early game. I'll just do early. And we're going to have a late. So Guardians placed further to the left are going to be more early game. Guardians placed further to the right are going to be more late game. And then on this y-axis, we're going to have aggressive and defensive. So more Guardians placed more towards the top are going to be more aggressive Guardians, more towards the bottom are more defensive Guardians. So you end up with basically four quadrants here, where you have like early game defensive Guardians, early game aggressive Guardians, late game aggressive Guardians, and late game defensive Guardians. And so yeah, let's just get into it and we'll place Ares. So Ares is definitely an aggressive early game Guardian. He's somewhere in here. How aggressive and how early game is he? I would say he's one of the most aggressive Guardians, so he's got to be like right up at the top here, I think. There's not many more Guardians that are more aggressive than Ares, I wouldn't say. And then he's definitely like quite early game, like he's sort of like early to mid game generally. He's like definitely one of the more early game Guardians though, for sure. Like late game he can do stuff, you know, a long cripple is useful, the ult is really good if you can have like a beads burner on your team and stuff like that, but he's generally a lot better early. So we'll leave him somewhere like there, we'll see, we might move him. We have Atio, so Atio's like very aggressive, that's for sure, you know, you don't really see Atio's peeling all that much, they kind of can, but they're generally sort of more aggressive Guardians. And then, to be honest, Atio's kind of like mid-game, she or like an all-rounder, she just kind of like performs at all stages of the game really, and Atio, like she can compete early, she can compete late, she's good mid-game, mid-game's probably where she's strongest. So to be honest, I think I'll put her right in the middle, and then she's like a little less aggressive than Ares, you know, and Atio can play defensive and peel for her carries if she wants to. Athena I feel like skews a little more late game. She does have like some decent damage early on, but like when the taunt really becomes super impactful is like in big late game team fights, although her ult is nice like early to mid game to like out-rotate the enemy support and stuff like that. In terms of aggressive versus defensive, I feel like Athena's a pretty good like middle ground. You know, she can stay back, she can like taunt to peel, she can dash in and taunt to be aggressive, she can like ult to people to like make aggressive rotations, or she can ult to people in like a more defensive way. Generally, Athena's like kind of right in the middle, I would say. And to be honest, I think she's also probably in the middle of early late. Maybe she skews like slightly more late game. We'll put her like here. Bacchus very aggressive, can be defensive kinda, but generally more aggressive. And then Bacchus early or late. It's kind of interesting, you know, early he kind of like transitions his playstyle as you go with Bacchus. Early game he's like quite aggressive, you know, big damage, like, but then late game his damage falls off a little bit and he plays a little bit more defensive because he's kind of like looking to more like peel with his stun and knock up and stuff like that, or just like engage. He's definitely more aggressive than defensive though, that's for sure. I feel like he's probably on a similar level to Atio, maybe slightly more aggressive than Atio. And then we'll put him like slightly towards the late game, I think. We'll leave him there. Kabrakan, very aggressive, you know, probably up here with Ares, I would say, you know, one of the few Guardians that isn't really viable as a support. Like, he kind of is, but not really. And then Kabrakan, I feel like he's kind of earlier. Not, like, super early, because he can still do stuff late, you know, he has, like, a double stun. The walls can be useful, but like he's got really aggressive like early game wave clear if you know you're playing him in solo or whatever, and he kind of comes out of the jungle hitting quite hard and things like that. So I'd say he skews a little bit more early game, but he's nowhere near like as early game as Ares. In terms of aggressiveness though, he's like right up there. Cerberus. So Cerberus is like a very much an all-rounder god, you know, he performs early because he has like really big damage on his 2 and stuff like that. He can perform late because he has like good CCs. I'd say he skews a little more aggressive. Like, you can definitely peel with Cerberus for sure, but like, you know, he works in solo. He's generally a little bit more of an aggressive Guardian using his big damage, getting in people's faces, so we'll put him like here. Fafnir, an interesting one. He's somewhere in the middle in terms of aggressive defensive, I think. I'd say he probably skews a little more aggressive. Because, like, especially when you're in Dragon form, he generally plays aggressive, like using that jump in stun and then, like, warning people and stuff like that. But you can play him more defensive, you know, 2-ing your team and just kind of, like, looking to peel. And then I think Fafnir is, like, generally a more late game Guardian. You know, you're looking to get late game with Fafnir where, like, your ults can have, like, a huge impact in team fights. You can, like, Dragon form 2 your whole team to get objectives and push down Phoenixes on sieges, stuff like that. Like, Fafnir is one of the more late game Guardians, I would say. So we'll drop him like there. Jormungandr, very aggressive. Another one of the Guardians that doesn't really work in support too much. Kinda can, but not really. And then in terms of early late, like he kinda can be a bit of a lane bully in solo, but he also does okay, like in the late game team fights, you know, his ult can be very disruptive and things like that. I feel like he does skew a little more early game though, and like he's very aggressive. We'll probably put him up somewhere near like where Kabrakan's at. You know, he's not as aggressive as Kabrakan and Ares, I wouldn't say. but he's definitely more aggressive than like Bacchus Atio, so we'll leave him there. Kumba, so believe it or not, Kumba's actually quite defensive. I know a lot of people play him Unga Bunga, like running at people trying to like ult them for big damage and stuff, but the way to actually play Kumba is to play Kumba defensive, so I'm going to put him where he should actually be and not where people play him, because like people play Kumba wrong in my opinion. And Kumba's generally more of a late game god, I would say. You know, he wants his big CCs to have like those impacts in team fights. His laning phase isn't amazing. Like, the only reason he has, like, a bit of early game is because he's sort of, like, damage reliant early on, kind of like Bacchus. You know, he can just carry early game because he does a lot of damage with, like, his flat base damages. But yeah, definitely more prevalent late game. Probably not as late game as Fafnir, I wouldn't say, though, so we'll put him right here. It's possible I might move Fafnir over a little bit because I think he is genuinely one of the most late game Guardians. Which, by the way, I'm doing these rankings in comparison to other Guardians. So like if I put Fafnir all the way over here, for example, I'm not saying he's the most late game god in the entire game. Like he's not more late game than Kali, for example, but relative to other Guardians, he's the most late game Guardian. You know, so that's why I'm putting him over there. But yeah, I think maybe we'll move Fafnir over slightly and put Kumba like here. Maybe move these a couple over a little bit. Kuzma, very much an all-rounder in terms of early-late. You know, early game, he does quite big damage, you know, pushing you through the wave, like hella insane damage, very good laning phase. But then also late game, he's very disruptive. You know, the ult is one of the best Guardian ults in the game, in my opinion, especially since they changed it so much where, like, it's more of a knock-up rather than a knock-back. You know, Thorns does better late game as well. You know, like, the Thorns on his 2, obviously better against, like, full late game hunters and basic attack assassins and stuff like that. So I'd say he skews maybe slightly more late game, but he does have some early game. And then in terms of aggressive defensive, Kuzma is quite aggressive. He can be defensive, you know, using his dash to peel and his ult to peel and stuff like that. Actually, to be honest, Kuzma is kind of what you make of him, which is why he's, like, quite a good design, in my opinion. After the changes, obviously. He wasn't a good design at release, but he's kind of what you make of him. You can absolutely play him defensive if you want to, and you can use the dash to peel and, like, push people onto walls. You can ult to peel, or you can be very aggressive if you want to. I feel like just generally because, like, Thorns isn't a very good defensive ability, we'll put him, like, slightly more towards the aggressive, which is probably, like, about here, I would say. In fact, you know what? Cerberus is definitely more aggressive than Kuzma, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap these two guys around. We'll put Kuzma down, like, here, and we'll put Cerberus up here. Sobek. So, aggressive late game is what I'm thinking for Sobek on, like, first glance. You know, his early game kind of sucks. He has, like, very bad wave clear, very low damage early game. He's generally just looking to survive, like, a solo lane laning phase, or maybe, like, just look for a few plucks and support and stuff like that. And then he's more aggressive because, like, generally you want to be, like, diving in, like, ulting people and getting the plucks and stuff like that. Sobek can peel, but he's generally better played as, like, a more aggressive pick. Probably on a similar level of aggression to Bacchus, I would say, and then, like, he's quite late game. Probably, like, here. Maybe not quite as late game as Fafnir. Sylvanas is a weird one. Once again, I feel like people play Sylvanas wrong a little bit. You know, people, like, play really aggressive on Sylvanas when I don't think you necessarily need to play as aggressive as a lot of people do. He's a very good defensive pick. You know, you just kind of stand there like a tree, and then you just, like, you know, if people dive your carries, you ult them, you know, you root them, you pull them away and things like that. But I guess he can pull people in, like, aggressively. So I guess I'll put him, like, somewhere in the middle. He's kind of like Kuzma in that, like, Sylvanas is kind of what you make of him, but I'd say he leans a little more defensive. And then in terms of early-late, he does have very good early game. His early is probably better than his late, even though his late is also pretty good. So I guess we'll put him, like, a little bit skewed early game. You know what, looking at this, we got, like, very few Guardians further down the defensive thing. So I think I'm going to do another one of my trademark shifts of the chart where I move everyone down a little bit. There we go, it looks a little better. Didn't change anything in terms of early late game, but just made everyone, like, slightly further down the chart, just so we have a bit more of a range rather than clustering everyone up in the aggressive category. Terra, interesting one. Terra's more late game, I feel like. She can have some, like, kind of big burst early game, but generally she's more of, like, a late game god. She's looking to get those big, you know, 5, 6, 7 man ults in team fights and things like that, and looking to, like, engage with the root. And then aggressive defensive, she can definitely play defensive, that's for sure. Terra's peel is actually quite good. But then she can also play aggressive. I feel like Terra is definitely more of, like, a what you make of her. Probably put her, like, right in the middle. Yamoja, like, late game generally, but to be honest, Yamoja's just OP, so she does well all the time. But, like, I think in general she leans more late game, and she probably also leans more defensive as well. Once again, you kind of can play Yamoja aggressive, and I feel like people play her too aggressive, in my opinion. Like, her only real good aggression, to be honest, is the fact that she can, like, ult people in and stuff like that. You know, you kind of want to be aggressive with an ult. But Yamoja's prowess really is kind of defensive. You know, she has healing, she has shields. The stun is, like, not too great on offense, actually. Because it's, like, quite telegraphed and takes time to hit. But, like, if you got a melee guy diving your backline, you know, the stun's very good for that. So I feel like, yeah, she does lean more defensive. Once again, kind of like Kumba and Sylvanas, people play her too aggressive, in my opinion. Is she more defensive than Kuzma? Maybe she is, actually. I feel like Yamoja is generally one of the more defensive guardians. We'll put her like here. Cthulhu, extremely aggressive. You know, another guardian that really doesn't kind of work in support. Can, but not really. And then I feel like Cthulhu's more late game, to be honest. Like, yeah, he does some okay damage and kind of can be a bit of a lane bully, actually. Yeah, maybe he's like only a little bit skewed late game, not super late game. We'll put him like around here. Ganesha. So skews defensive, but you can play a Ganesha like fairly aggressive as well. Probably a similar like aggressive defensive stat to like Sylvanas. In terms of early late, I feel like Ganesha skews a little bit more late game, to be honest. We'll drop him like there. Geb, generally quite defensive. Can be aggressive, you know, if you want to do Blink Ult 2 and things like that, but you could also just peel for your carries by doing Ult 2 and it's totally fine. And obviously the shield, very defensive. Probably on a similar level of defensive to Yamoja in that like he can go aggressive, like Yamoja can go aggressive, but I feel like he's better played defensive. And then in terms of early late game, Geb's like very late game, dude. More late game than Fafnir? Maybe, honestly. Like Geb's so strong late game. Like once he gets that shield online and like his ult 2 like lock combo because the 2 doesn't DR from the ult, it's like so good, dude. Khepri, similar to Geb in terms of like he's defensive late, that's for sure. So I guess we're comparing him to Geb. Is he more defensive than Geb? Maybe, because like his 2 basically, late game, Khepri's 2 is just defensive. You very rarely 2 enemies in the late game as Khepri if you're playing well. You want to 2 your own teammates. I mean, I guess like he has the 3 and the 1 and stuff, but those can be used defensively as well, and the ult is obviously mostly defensive. So yeah, probably slightly more defensive than Geb, I would say. And then in terms of early late, Khepri has like more early game than Geb, that's for sure. He's maybe like here or something. Because like he has insanely good wave clear early on and stuff like that. He can actually kind of pressure. So we'll put Khepri like there. And you know what? We're going to shift everyone towards the early game because we only have like basically 4 early game guardians here. And generally guardians do skew more late game than other classes. But once again, it's relative. So we'll move some guys here. Alright, there we go. That'll do. Right, let's place Ymir. Ymir, interesting, to be honest. He's probably more aggressive in general. You know, you're looking to kind of like be aggressive, wall people, freeze them. Like your ult is basically just mostly an aggressive tool. You know, very big damage, that kind of stuff. But like you can peel, obviously. You know, the freeze is one of the best peels in the game, to be completely honest with you. But I'd say he skews more aggressive. And then in terms of early late, I gotta say Ymir's probably early game. Like he can do really well late as well. It kind of depends on how you play. But in general, like, you know, his damage is going to fall off late, and a lot of the reason you pick Ymir is for his damage. You know, like his 2 and his ult basically only do damage. You know, the slows are pretty irrelevant, to be honest. So late game, you're really only playing around the wall and the freeze once his damage falls off. So he probably skews like slightly more early game. And then, yeah, we've got a nice spot for him right there where he's like just skewing slightly aggressive. So we'll drop him there. And then Xingqian, final one. Xingqian's definitely more aggressive. I mean, he can peel as well, but like generally you don't want to be like Xingqian to peel, to be honest. It's kind of like Ares ult, you know, you don't really want to be Ares ulting to peel for people, you want to be pulling people in with that. And granted, this 2 is very good for peel, that's for sure, especially against melee characters. Generally, I feel like with Xing, you want to be, you know, kind of getting up in people's faces, wanting the enemy like ADC and stuff like that, like throwing people in, forcing beads, like jumping around the backline, 2ing people. Like, he's generally a bit more aggressive. And then Xing, I feel like, is probably more late game as well. You know, Xing gets most of his stuff done, like, generally later into the game. But not like super late game. Probably, you know, around the level of Terra, I would say. We'll put him like right here. Is he more aggressive than Sobek? Yeah, he probably is. Yeah, let's drop him like right there. And yeah, that's the Guardian alignment chart. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know if you agree or disagree on any of these placements. I'm sure you disagree with a couple of them. But I feel like in general this is pretty good. You might disagree with some of my placements like Kuzma, Yamoja, and Sylv, where I think people play them way too aggressive. I feel like some people, based on their experience, will probably put Sylvanas in like the aggressive category, but I feel like generally you do want to play him defensive outside of the early game. Obviously, you do play kind of aggressive on Sylvanas early game because you have so much wave clear and stuff like that. And if you're memeing around with attack speed Sylvanas solo, yeah, you're going to be playing aggressive, but I'm talking about like his primary application here, which is a defensive support in my opinion. If you enjoyed this one, be sure to drop a like and comment down below if you want to see Hunters or Warriors next. I think for both of those, it'll likely be early late and auto-attack ability. You know, definitely for Hunters. For Warriors, I could do like aggressive defensive early late like I've done for this one. So let me know that as well. Like, for Warriors, do you want to see early late aggressive defensive or early late ability auto-attack? Let me know on that one. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.